You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
U.S. Cellular has noticed the way we use our phones has gotten ironic. We try to put our phones down for dinner, but the menu's on a QR code. That's ironic. We hit like on social posts that we don't actually like, which is ironic. Which is why U.S. Cellular created Us Mode, to help us reconnect with each other and use our phones less ironically. A phone company wanting people to use their phones less is ironic. Let's find us again with Us Mode from U.S. Cellular. Visit uscellular.com/built-for-us to get started.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, Pack_Dada. Well, today is going to be Stats Day, I think. I'll be honest, I didn't even watch the second half of that 49ers-Jets game, but I do know that looked all too similar to 49ers-Packers game when Rodgers was there. I was hoping something would be different. Well, he's got a good defense now or some kind of nonsense. Well, they gave up 32 points and they only scored 19 points. So, so much for all that stuff. 49ers continue to do what the freaking 49ers do. Was hoping maybe the Jets could help us out a little bit. Rodgers could help us out. Stick it to the 49ers who have stuck it to him so many times, but it's not meant to be. So, unfortunately, the 49ers continue being the freaking 49ers who always win, and it's annoying. That's all the updates I have on that. Why don't we... let me see if there's any actually interesting... Oh, there are some interesting news and notesy things here. Let me just get these off the list. First of all, before it gets too old, Rome Odunze apparently also sprained his MCL, be considered week to week. That kind of came out of nowhere. As far as I'm concerned, I didn't really know he even got injured in that Bears game. All of a sudden, he's getting an MRI and stuff. So we'll see what his status is. Unfortunate to hear for the rookie and whatnot. Netflix also announced they have an Aaron Rodgers Enigma series, which actually looks pretty cool. I was watching Rodgers explain like the percentages of routes and whatnot. Somebody posted something about this is how you know he's a genius. And it's like, well, here's the thing. It's not so much that you understand percentages. I'm sure everybody has explained that in football. And it kind of just seems, it's a smart way to think about it, but it's not mega genius level. The mega genius level is the ability to actually process it. Like if he can actually process that on the fly, which I think he can, that's when you get to mega genius level. David Bakhtiari filed for an injury protection benefit, this via Ken Ingalls, from the Green Bay Packers after being released with a failed physical designation before the 2024 season. He will receive $2 million with $1.23 counting against the Packers' salary cap. I haven't looked at the comments section, but apparently it's full of people very angry about David Bakhtiari fleecing us or whatever. It's like, okay, we have, $20 million, and he's going to take $1 million of that on his way out the door, but okay. That's about it. Otherwise, everyone's still talking about the Tyreek Hill thing. Cops, the body cam thing came out, and those cops were, well, I shouldn't say all the cops. One guy seemed to be super juiced up. I feel like the guy that actually wore the body cam that's being released was kind of like, all right, this is a little crazy. But, I'm assuming that guy's going to get suspended or something. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I don't really feel the need to talk about that for 6 months. Tyreek Hill was released and on the field that day. Also, the betting yesterday did not go very well. I set another Prize Picks lineup. I did okay. I had Aaron Rodgers under. I had Brees Hall over 15.5 attempts, so I hit on those. Unfortunately, I did not hit on the rest. Got to look at the upcoming prize picks to see what I'm planning on doing. By the way, be sure to check that out. Speaking of, also, by the way, the prize picks, I understand there's an issue with the ad music playing for like 45 minutes. I have reached out, so hopefully that gets updated soon. But just so you know, because I'm having a lot of people reach out to me, even Clayton, people reaching out to Clayton to let him know. We are aware, and it is being worked on. I'm hoping that gets fixed as soon as possible. Because I noticed the same day. It was yesterday, and I never listened to podcasts, but I was like, I'm going to put on mine, just see how it sounds. I haven't really listened to it in a while, and there's been a lot of issues. So I put it on while I was like getting some work done, and the ads came up, and I couldn't skip it, which somebody else told me about that too. I don't know if it's a Spotify thing where I can't skip, or if it just, I don't know what exactly the problem was. But the ad came on, and I'm like, oh, what the, it's freaking, no. And then I couldn't skip it. I had to listen to that thing the whole time. It was really, really annoying. I mean, as much as I dislike listening to my own podcast, I really dislike listening to me reading ads and everything. But that was rough. But code PackDaddy, prize picks, make sure you use that if you want to go check it out. They still got a deal over there, by the way. Caleb Williams, more or less than 0.5 pass yards. That's basically a gimme. But I had, as far as just the straight-up bet, I was feeling real good about betting the Jets against the spread because the Super Bowl losers in Week 1 do not fare very well at all. And then specifically with that spread, it's like 20% that they cover the spread. So I was feeling pretty good about it. But, of course, the 49ers beat the living crap out of them, so I did not get that. My other Sunday bets, I won all of those. All right, let's do some statistics. I'm going to mix and match between SIS and NFL. I haven't done this before, so I don't know how it's going to go. I'm not going to, like, if they have the same stat, I'll just pick one because I don't want there to be any like, well, they say it's this and they say it's this. So I don't know. We're just only when they have different things we'll look at it. But I want to go position by position as opposed to doing SIS and then NFL because then it's just going to be stupid. So let's start with the quarterbacks here. And I'll be comparing to the rest of the NFL just so we kind of have an understanding of kind of where everybody's at. So starting with SIS, first of all, obviously the accuracy issues were there for Jordan. If we look at catchable passes, and I've always said Pat Mahomes is not the most accurate. Pat Mahomes, 28 attempts, 100% catchable. That's pretty crazy. He also had 92% on target, so he was wildly accurate in that game. Jordan Love, 50% completion percentage, 83% of his passes were catchable, 60% were on target. He ranked 20th in his catchable pass percentage. His on target, he ranked 23rd at 60%. Just to give you an idea, below him is Justin Fields, then Dak, then Bryce Young, then Anthony Richardson, then Jacoby Brissett, then Deshaun Watson. By the way, dead last place, Caleb Williams. 40.7% of his passes were on target. It's hilarious because I used to make fun of Justin Fields because he was always dead last in these. He's so bad in especially like on target passes, catchable passes, and all that stuff. Now, Justin is 24th and Caleb is 30th. But not the best day as far as accuracy is concerned. Adjusted net yards per attempt, again, very, very good metric. If you're just looking for an overall metric to grade quarterbacks, he was 8th. Just above him is Sam Darnold, the quarterback of the hour. Guy had a great day. And then Tua, Patrick Mahomes, Anthony Richardson, who, again, was a little bit up and down, especially as far as accuracy, kind of similar to Jordan, but really uncorked some ridiculous passes. And Josh Allen, Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield. So and this kind of goes to the call that I had. I think it was last night or 2 nights ago. In regard to there being accuracy issues, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're bad at football. Like it's a thing that you need to get better at because it's hard to be a good quarterback if you're inaccurate. But it's not the most important metric in the world. Touchdown percentage, Jordan Love ranks 7th right now. He has a touchdown percentage of 5.9%. He is sandwiched between C.J. Stroud and Jalen Hurts. Passer rating, he ranks 21st. IQR, which is like the SIS proprietary passer rating, he ranks 15th. Pressure percentage, from least pressured to most pressured, he actually ranks 15th. I think the offensive line performed better than a lot of Packer fans remember, because we know it was pretty rough for a while. But if you look at like some of the pressures, his pressure rate wasn't terrible. And again, the running, like if you look at yards per attempt across the board, was really, really good. 15th isn't the best in the world, but it's certainly not terrible. Some of the more advanced stuff I can't get into because SIS hasn't updated it yet. Points earned per play and all that kind of stuff, for whatever reason, is not updated. EPA, I think, and NFL thing has, and they also have EPA per play, so I'll let them tell that story. Points above replacement. Oh, shoot, they don't have that either. I was going to say that's a good one. I can see Jordan. He has 0.4, which is behind Lamar and Pat Mahomes, but I don't know anything else beyond that. Oh, and Jalen Hurts is negative 1.1, so he's way down there. But there's a bunch of zeros, so I don't know where he ranks. So Jordan was an above-average quarterback, but just kind of barely. Boom percentage, he was 8th, which is a good thing. Bust percentage, he ranked 12th, so 12th lowest bust percentage. So, again, a lot of metrics really not that bad. In fact, some of them quite high. And again, when you look at the company he's with, again, this time he's sandwiched between Stroud and Lamar. Not terrible. And I think part of it is Jordan didn't have a great outing, but also most quarterbacks had pretty bad outings. It was a rough week 1 for offenses around the NFL in large part. So, comparatively, Jordan's still kind of in that top 10-ish range. Talked about CPOE as we go over to NFL Pro. Jordan was real bad. He was the 4th lowest CPOE, negative 13.8%. So 13.8% worse than what he should have done, according to NFL Next Gen Stats. He was only above Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, and Daniel Jones. So not a very good day as far as him taking advantage of his opportunities. Again, it's not 100%. Like if Kurt Bankert is correct on the one play, then perhaps, there might be some leeway there, but whatever. EPA per dropback, which I like to use more so than just EPA. Jordan Love was 15th at a negative 0.03. So basically a 0. Deep percentage, what percentage of the time did he throw the deep ball? He ranks 12th, 11.8% of his passes were deep passes. And then actually, according to NFL Pro, when you look at his pressure rate, Jordan Love, they have him at 25.7%, which is the 7th least amount of pressures. And interestingly enough, when you look at the blitz rate, he was blitzed the 6th most. So when you look at how good that offensive line did, that's insanely impressive. He was blitzed 34% of the time, which is the 6th most, and he was pressured 25% of the time, almost 26% of the time, which is the 7th least. That's really impressive from an offensive line standpoint. Average separation of his receivers, I don't know if that's targets or receivers, but 3.6 yards, that's tied for 14th most, so pretty league average. And then what percentage of his throws were thrown into tight windows? He was 13th, so again, pretty average there, 14.7% of his throws. All right, moving over to the running backs, rushing attack, etc. If we look at yards after contact per attempt, according to SIS, Josh Jacobs ranks 8th right now. And actually, this is not just running backs. And since I can only do this in SIS for some reason, it's one thing that's stupid about NFL Pro. You can't select position. But, for example, he ranks 8th, but he's behind Anthony Richardson and Deshaun Watson and stuff. So if we don't have any minimum carries, actually Emmanuel Wilson is the highest, or second highest. J.K. Dobbins, 7.6 yards after contact per attempt. then Emmanuel Wilson 5.3. If we put in the minimum of 5 carries, which is what it was initially set at, Emmanuel Wilson is no longer on it, but Josh Jacobs comes in at 5th highest yards after contact per attempt. If you look at broken tackle plus missed tackle percentage per attempt or whatever, he ranks 17th. 18.8% of his attempts were either a broken or a missed tackle. Hit at the line percentage, 50% of the time he was hit at the line of scrimmage. He ranks 7th in stuff percentage, so 37.5% of the time he was stuffed. EPA per attempt is 11th. Now, one of the things I'd point out about this kind of thing is we got to understand what we're looking at here. So when we're judging Josh Jacobs, I'm actually potentially more interested in the, what he was able to create, so after contact type stuff. The problem with EPA per attempt, not that it's hard to gauge, because if your offensive line sucks, you cannot accumulate EPA, right? Even though I'm sure they try to decide how much is yours and the offensive line's credit. Again, if you can't get yardage, then you're not going to be able to accumulate EPA. But anyways, SIS has him 8th in EPA per attempt. What else is interesting here? Not a ton. Kick it over to NFL. This is one of the big ones for Josh Jacobs. Rush yards over expected. And this is where we isolate what he did, especially, this honestly might be maybe one of my favorite metrics if you want to just gauge how good a running back is. Because it literally answers every question I want to know. How good of a job did you do compared to what you were expected to do, right? So a baseline running back would have done this in that situation. What did you do? Josh Jacobs ranks 3rd. It's J.K. Dobbins, then Aaron Jones, then Josh Jacobs. He has plus 38 rush yards over expected. And actually probably better than that would be rush yards over expected per attempt, where he ranks 4th, but that's behind Jacoby Brissett, so that doesn't really count. It's plus 2.4 per attempt. So the Packers right now invested in Josh Jacobs and are getting 2.4 more yards per attempt than what would be expected, right? So like a baseline average right now is Devin Singletary with 0 rush yards over expected per attempt. He's getting exactly what was expected of him. Hilariously, I just want to see who is the worst in the NFC North. Jahmyr Gibbs right now, minus 0.5. Now, subject to change, obviously, but it is funny how much that dude gets hyped up, and I have yet to see exactly why. Just curious, EPA according to this, to see if there's any differences. They have him at plus 2, which is Josh Jacobs at 13. Again, I don't really care about that because it's a run metric, a run game metric, offensive line plus, and it's more of a statistic. It's more like rush yards, because it's how successful was that play. It's just not a great metric, in my opinion, for how good is the running back. If you want to know, like, EPA for an offense or something, it's probably a better metric. For individual players, I don't think it's my favorite. Then they also have this, which is pretty interesting. They have miles per hour. So how many runs were over 15 miles per hour, just for the sake of being interesting. Not that Josh Jacobs is known for being super fast, and he doesn't rank super high, but he did have 3 carries over 15 miles per hour in this game. He ranks, tied for 13th with that. But I just thought it was kind of cool that they had that. It would be more interesting for the wide receivers when we get over there. Carries over 20 miles per hour for running backs. Josh Jacobs didn't have any. Only 1 did. Actually, that's not true. 0 did. The only guy that did was Jaden Daniels. Had 1 carry over 20 miles per hour. That he's going to be fun to watch, I think. In their advanced stats, I don't know that there's anything that's super interesting in here that we haven't already covered. Rush yards over expected one. It does show, actually, I'm curious about this. Expected rush yards. I wish they had expected rush yards. Oh, maybe they do. Expected yards per carry. This is, in my opinion, an offensive line metric. And go figure, Josh Jacobs, 47th out of 48. He was expected 2.9 yards per carry. So the only one worse than that was Seattle Seahawks' Zach Charbonnet, 2 yards per carry. So, yeah, he in particular, not necessarily everybody else or Emmanuel Wilson, because I don't know, I can't see. But Josh Jacobs had the second worst situation of any running back as far as run blocking goes. And he still carved out, 5-some-odd yards per attempt? Really impressive day from Josh Jacobs. Like, significantly impressive. And even worse than that for the offensive line, when you look at, they also have a stacked box percentage. How often did he face a stacked box? Just 6.3%. That is the 41st most. So there were 6 players didn't face any stacked boxes. Aaron Jones is one of those. Of the guys that did, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs are the two next lowest. 6.3%. So he almost never faced a stacked box and still had the second least amount of expected rush yards. Crazy. All right, let's take a break here. We'll come back, look at some of the receiving stats, and probably not going to be a ton for offensive line, but we'll look at that at least for SIS. And then we'll flip over to defense, and hopefully we'll get to some of the team stuff. We'll see. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
U.S. Cellular has noticed the way we use our phones has gotten ironic. We try to put our phones down for dinner, but the menu's on a QR code. That's ironic. We hit like on social posts that we don't actually like, which is ironic. Which is why U.S. Cellular created Us Mode, to help us reconnect with each other and use our phones less ironically. A phone company wanting people to use their phones less is ironic. Let's find us again with Us Mode from U.S. Cellular. Visit uscellular.com/built-for-us to get started.
So first of all, although this is not usually a metric that I care about, in terms of total yards, Jaden Reed is number 1 in the NFL ahead of Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill has 130 yards, Jaden Reed 138. Craziness. PFF, for whatever reason, does not have yards per route run finished yet, but yards per target, Jaden Reed comes in at second. And then you've got Tucker Kraft 17th, Romeo Doubs 74th, and it's all down from there. I'm not going to go through absolutely everybody. Broken tackle plus missed tackle per reception percentage, etc., whatever. Let's see, who do we got at the tippy top here? That can't be right. Come on now. Stupid thing. Whenever you do Control F, sometimes it gets goofy on you. Jaden Reed, again at the top, ranks 36th. Romeo Doubs, 38th. Jaden Reed, 25% broken tackle plus missed tackle per reception. So he either had a broken tackle or a missed tackle for on 25% of his receptions. EPA per target, Jaden Reed ranks 3rd in the NFL. Tucker Kraft, 31st. Romeo Doubs, 61st. On and on down it goes. Josh Jacobs, 75th. And then I don't think that's all filled out. Let's just go straight over to NFL because I know they got at least their stuff done. They have catch rate over expected, which is interesting. It's kind of like a hands metric, I guess. How many receptions did you make over what was expected? Obviously, Alec Pierce is the highest. He had 2 ridiculously deep, tight coverage receptions in that game. Packers, not super high in this metric. I got to keep scrolling here. Keep on going. I think, unless I missed somebody, the highest is actually Christian Watson, and it's 0.07%. So I don't think anybody would have expected the Packers to have the greatest hands. Tucker Kraft, minus 8.3%. Jaden Reed, minus 9.8%. Romeo Doubs, minus 11.4%. Emmanuel Wilson, minus 21%. So certainly an area where this team can improve is accuracy and catching the freaking football. Then they got yards after the catch over expected. A lot of the over expected things are pretty cool. Jaden Reed, not surprisingly, ranks 10th, quite high on this list. 27 yards over expected cumulatively. Josh Jacobs actually ranks 26th also with +8, as does Tucker Kraft, +8. And then average separation, the highest Packer was Josh Jacobs at 6.2. I don't know if there's any other Packers in the top 50. Jaden Reed, 5.3 yards of separation, ranks 31st. Maybe Emmanuel Wilson, 67th, 3.8. Let's see who struggled in this category here. I want to get everybody on record for the separation thing. Tucker Kraft, well, that's annoying. It doesn't change the rank. It says he's 15th, but he's 15th on the second page. So 70 plus 15, 85th he ranks. Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson, both 2.4 yards of separation, ranks 60th and 61st on the second page, so 130th. Fortunately, nobody on the last page, so there you go. All right, I think that's good enough for the receiving. What are we missing here? Offensive line, there isn't a ton. Let's look at SIS. They do have some offensive line stuff that's worth looking at. So they've got a blown block percentage. Several people have a 0, and by several I mean 13 out of, a lot of people. Although actually they don't have everybody in here, do they? No, they've only got the first couple games. I will say this though. Tucker Kraft and Zach Tom had 0 blown blocks. So there's that. Zach Tom, again, getting a bunch of credit. Let me just look at what they have over here on the rates and stuff, and then we'll get out of here, because I want some more opportunities to praise Zach Tom, if at all possible. So I think they only have the early games. They don't have any stats from some of the other games. If we look at points earned per snap, I don't know if that's an interesting one or not. Here, let's just do this. Let's do wins above replacement or points above replacement. The highest graded offensive lineman, let's just say according to PFF, WAR is a pretty solid, this is how good the player is. Ronnie Stanley, left tackle for the Ravens, would be number 1 with a 1.8 PAR. Zach Tom is number 2. So there you go. Of all the offensive linemen, not just tackles, offensive linemen in the Chiefs-Ravens game and Eagles-Packers games, Zach Tom is the second highest rated. We'll leave it at that. Defense is going to be tough. I don't know that either of these is going to be great at defense. Let me just try NFL here. The problem is, again, you can't sort by position, so it's just all defense. Let's see what we can glean from this, though, shall we? Otherwise, we can just look at Packers specifically and maybe kind of zero in on some stuff. Some of these will be better than others. Yeah, I don't think this is going to work. So, for example, they've got things like catch rate over expected, which is such a cool metric. The problem is you can't even filter. They have qualified defenders just as a tab, but that's just defensive snaps, not coverage snaps. So, AJ Epinesa is number 1, who's a defensive lineman who had 1 snap in coverage, and that's the first 20 guys. So, let's just look at Green Bay Packers and some of the individual stats that they had, just so we can kind of see how they ranked against each other, I suppose. And some of these things, like over expected, is a pretty standalone metric. I don't really need to compare it to everybody else to understand it. Why don't we start with that since I'm on that tab? This is mostly coverage type stuff. So we already looked at things like passer rating when targeted or whatever, so we've already been over that. Let's look at catch rate over expected, because I think that is a pretty cool metric. From worst to best, Isaiah McDuffie plus 38.6, Javon Bullard plus 16.9, Quay Walker 11.9, Keyshawn Nixon 6.2, Stokes 5.8. So that's how much worse than expected those guys were. Then there was 0 with Preston Kenny and TJ Slayton. The guys who did above average as far as guys catching passes over expected: Xavier McKinney, minus 3.4, and then Jair Alexander, minus 3.6. Rashawn actually is number 1 with a negative 90.5, but I don't know if you want to count that or not. He's 1 snap in coverage, and he batted the pass away. So according to catch rate over expected, just in terms of play-to-play coverage, did you allow a pass? Jair is our best guy, followed by Xavier McKinney. Let's look at average separation here. Rashawn Gary allowed the most separation. What a bum. On that one play, the guy was 8.1 yards away. Stupid. Isaiah McDuffie, 4.9 yards of separation. Eric Stokes, 4.6. Bullard, 3.8. Keyshawn Nixon, 3.5. Quay, 3.3. McKinney, 2.4. Jair, 2.3. So, again, not only did he allow the least amount of catches, or catch rate over expected was the smallest, but he also allowed the least amount of separation. He had the tightest coverage of anybody. They've actually got a ball hawk percentage, which I'm guessing is any amount of, getting your hand on the ball, whether that's a pick or a pass breakup, what percentage, which is, again, a cool metric. Jair, 22%, Keyshawn, 25%, Xavier McKinney, 50%, Rashawn Gary, 100%. Let's flip it over to pass rush. So this is going to be different, and PFF is also this way, very different than what PFF comes up with. I'm actually curious what SIS says about some of these things and if they're more in line with what NFL says. And by the way, I do trust probably this NFL Pro on certain things like pressure stats and everything else more so than anything else, because they have like computer chips tracking everything. You know what I mean? It's not guys who are not getting paid, checking boxes or whatever. All right. So we've got sack percentage isn't all that interesting because Rashawn Gary's the only one. Keyshawn did too. Keyshawn 33%, Rashawn Gary 4.2%. But pressure rate is pretty interesting because remember, Kenny was the highest according to PFF. It was like 4 pressures on 30 some odd attempts. According to NFL, though, no, it was Rashawn Gary. So they have Javon Bullard 100%, Keyshawn Nixon 66%, Isaiah McDuffie 33%, Rashawn Gary 12.5%, Kenny 10.3%, Preston 7.1%, TJ Slayton 5.9%. Now, as I look at it, I say, well, 12.5% and 10.3%, maybe not the greatest thing in the world, but I also don't know, like that metric I came up with as far as 10% is a PFF specific thing. I'd have to kind of potentially readapt that to this. Maybe not. I don't know. But, that would put Kenny right at about, that's fine, I guess, and Rashawn at a pretty good, if I'm using kind of what I adapted for PFF. Time to pressure from slowest to fastest. Preston 3.9, Rashawn 3.8, Kenny 3.17, Keyshawn 3.15, TJ Slayton got a pressure in 2.6 seconds, McDuffie 2.2, and the fastest was Bullard at 1.7 seconds. How many QB pressures came in under 3 seconds? Which is actually a pretty cool metric too, because a lot of these pressures are great, but they're basically because of coverage. This is how much legitimate pressures did you have. Bullard, McDuffie, Nixon, and Gary each had 1. Kenny had 2. They've also got a thing called get off, which is awesome, which how quickly, on average, does a player get across the line of scrimmage? How fast is their get off? From slowest to fastest, TJ Slayton, 1.12 seconds, Kenny Clark, 1.1, Rashawn, 1.02, Quay, 0.95, McDuffie, 0.94, Preston, 0.92, Keyshawn, 0.64, Javon Bullard, 0.56. That dude is just flying. And then, if we go over to SIS, just want to make sure that they actually have everything. They don't. I was going to say, they got a lot of Packers up top. They don't have a lot of this stuff filled in, so we'll just skip that. All right, why don't we take a break, and then on the other side of it, what we'll do is on NFL Pro, they have some team stats. We'll just see where the Packers stack up against the NFL right now on offense and on defense. I'll check also if DVA is up. I think it is. DVOA, so we can check that for some team stats. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Actually, since we're doing team stats, why don't we start with PFF, just see where the grades rank right now. Right now, the Green Bay Packers, they have ranked 26th with a 60.3 grade, only better than the Jaguars, Commanders, Giants, Titans, Panthers, and Broncos. So PFF thinks the Packers are dog crap. They have the Minnesota Vikings 3rd, the Lions 5th, the Bears 8th. They have the Packers offense actually ranked 11th, but the defense ranked 29th with a 50.7 grade. If I'm not mistaken, I think DVOA is somewhat similar. I don't think they're ranked quite so low, but it's very similar in terms of like the offense is actually graded overall not good. Offense is ranked pretty high. Let me see here. Yeah, so they have Green Bay ranked 17th. They have the offense ranked 11th and the defense ranked 22nd right now. So work to be done for sure. But, all right, let's get to some stats over here from the NFL and whatnot. The Packers offense right now ranks 7th in points per game with 29. They rank 3rd in yards per game, 414 yards. Only the Texans and Ravens had more yards. They are tied for number 1 with the Kansas City Chiefs in yards per play. So it's still a high-octane offense, and that's with a lot of errant issues. Looking at EPA per play, the Green Bay Packers rank 7th with .12. They're one spot behind. Actually, they're tied with the Lions, so they're tied for 12th with the Lions at .12. Vikings are 11th, and the Chicago Bears are 26th with a negative .31 EPA per play. EPA per pass, the Green Bay Packers are 11th with a negative .05, which is not what you want from a passing game. However, the Green Bay Packers are number 1 in EPA per rush. Now, Jaden Reed's run has a lot to do with that, but .42. They're actually ahead of the Detroit Lions, who are .37. So Packers number 1, Lions number 2. A lot of the stuff we looked at already, blitz percentage and whatnot, it's going to be the same as the quarterback blitz percentage. I mean, I guess it could be slightly different because we had one of the quarterback, but we're not going to look at that. Yards after the catch over expected as a team, the Green Bay Packers rank 7th, 46 yards after the catch over expected. That is number 1 in the NFC North. Average separation as a team, the Packers are 15th, 3.6. Well, I guess they're tied for 14th, 3.6 yards of average separation. That ranks 3rd in the NFC North. Lions are 10th, Vikings are 7th. Run percentage, just out of curiosity, what percentage of the time did the Packers run? They ranked 28th, so it was very pass-heavy, which could be part of the problem because obviously we were more successful running the ball than passing the ball on this day. But whatever. Packers were tied for 3rd in the amount of 10-plus yard rushes with 5, tied with the Ravens and a bunch of other teams behind only the 49ers and the Texans. Stuffed percentage, what percentage of the time did the running back get stuffed? 4th highest, not great. Again, offensive line struggled, especially early on. I know I said they didn't struggle as much as we thought. A lot of it had to do with, the pass blocking I think is better than we thought. I think a lot of the running went better because of the running backs. It seems to be the way that this is being painted. Success rate when running the ball, they ranked 6th. Rush yards over expected as a team, they ranked 2nd behind only the Chargers, plus 85 rush yards over expected. That's crazy. We should have had 85 less rush yards in this game. And then if you look at it per attempt, they're actually number 1, 4 rush yards per attempt over expected. They were number 1 in yards after contact per attempt, 6.11 yards after contact per attempt. Craziness. And also, strangely, for being an outside zone team, Packers ran outside 29th, and then they ran inside 4th, the 4th most on inside runs, 61.9% of the time. Switching over to team defense, Packers gave up the 3rd most amount of points. They were tied for 3rd most amount. Only Washington and Carolina gave up more points, not a group you want to be involved with. Yards per game, the Green Bay Packers gave up the 4th most amount of yards. Only the, Eagles, Colts, and Chiefs gave up more. Love to see it from the Colts, by the way. Much better when you look at it on a per-play basis. The Packers only gave up 5.5 yards per play, which is 13th. So apparently they just ran a crap ton of plays against us, which is either a function of not being able to get off the field or our offense not being able to stay on the field, which may be a little bit of both. I know the offense certainly contributed to that. EPA per play, the Packers ranked 20th. EPA per pass, the Packers ranked 27th with a plus .19. Packers' run defense was significantly better. They had according to EPA per run, the 7th best run defense, which again is kind of backed up by a lot of the stats. I mean, the quarterback really didn't run for anything. The yards per attempt for pretty much everybody, including Saquon, was not that good. Pressure rate, the Packers ranked 18th. They brought pressure 34.1% of the time. The highest rate, just for sort of a standard, I guess, 48% by the Bengals. The Bears had the second highest rate at 47%. Vikings were 10th. Lions 25th, so we weren't last. Yards after contact over expected. The Packers were 30th, which is real bad. In other words, like, you did not get them down when you should have. So the tackling and whatnot really needs to get cleaned up. I understand having big physical guys like they have is part of the issue, but it has to get cleaned up. Average separation of the receivers, the Packers ranked 16th, so exactly average at 3.5. Flipping over to advanced run stats, rush yards per play allowed, Packers ranked 10th with 3.8. Tied for 13th in how many 10-plus yard runs. Actually, they tied for 12th with only 3 allowed. They were 8th most in stuff percentage, 23.7%. Number 1 in the NFC North. And I think that's about it. Yards before contact per attempt, Packers ranked 11th, 0.72. So they got pretty early contact on them. This would be another somewhat interesting one. All right, I think that's about it. Why don't we leave it at that? Again, quite a few. I know there's a lot of numbers being thrown around, heads are spinning and whatnot, but it is good to see kind of very specifically where things lie. And definitely going to take a look at Edgerrin Cooper today at the very least, because I'm very excited to watch him. But otherwise, I'll leave you with that. We got to start turning our attention to our upcoming opponents, and we'll see how she goes. We'll take a break. We'll be, or not taking a break. We're leaving. Have a good one. Bye-bye.